The constellation drifted through the darkness of space, its engines humming softly as it moved between star systems. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair, reading through survey reports from the previous week. His crew had been exploring this region for 8 months now, mapping new systems and looking for planets that humans could settle on someday. It was quiet work, sometimes boring, but Jake enjoyed it. The ship was not very large compared to military vessels, but it had everything they needed. There were 40 people on board, scientists and engineers mostly, with a small security team just in case. They had found 3 potentially habitable planets so far, which made the mission a success in Jake's eyes. Command back on Earth was pleased with their progress. Lisa Harper sat at the communications station, her headset on as she monitored the usual signals that filled space. Radio waves from distant stars, cosmic radiation, the occasional automated beacon from old satellites. Nothing unusual. She had been doing this job for 6 years and could recognize normal patterns in her sleep. Then something changed. A new signal appeared on her screen, strong and getting stronger. It was not natural. Someone was broadcasting. And they were close. Lisa's eyes widened as she adjusted her equipment, trying to get a clearer reading. The signal was coming from a ship, a big one, and it was heading straight toward them. "Captain, we have company," Lisa said, her voice calm but alert. "Unknown vessel approaching." "It's huge, sir. At least 5 times our size." Jake stood up from his chair and walked over to her station. He looked at the display, studying the readings. The ship was definitely military, bristling with weapons and armor. Its design was unfamiliar, not human. This was first contact with an alien species, something humanity had been preparing for but had not yet experienced. "Put it on screen when they get close enough," Jake said. "And send a general greeting. Let them know we're peaceful explorers." Lisa nodded and transmitted a message in multiple formats, including basic mathematical sequences that any intelligent species should understand. They waited. The alien ship continued to approach, not slowing down. It was larger than anything humans had built, a massive construct of dark metal and glowing energy ports. Ben Carter, the tactical officer, was already at his station, his hands moving over the controls as he analyzed the ship. "Weapons systems are active on that vessel," he reported. "Multiple energy signatures. They're definitely ready for a fight if they want one." "Let's hope they don't want one," Jake said. "Keep our weapons offline for now. No sense looking aggressive." The alien ship stopped about 10,000 kilometers away, close enough to be threatening but not quite in firing range. Then their view screen lit up, and an alien face appeared. The creature was tall and humanoid, with dark blue skin and sharp features. Its eyes were a bright gold color, and it wore armor covered in symbols and decorations. The expression on its face was one of complete arrogance. "I am Commander Vexar of the Valorian Empire," the alien said. Its voice came through the translator with a tone of superiority. "You have entered Valorian space without permission. This is a violation of Imperial law." Jake studied the alien for a moment. The Valorians clearly thought very highly of themselves. The commander's posture, the way he spoke, everything about him screamed authority and power. He was trying to intimidate them. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the human exploration ship Constellation," Jake replied. "We didn't know this space belonged to anyone. Our sensors didn't detect any territorial markers or warning beacons. We're just here to explore and gather scientific data." Vexar's expression did not change. If anything, he looked even more contemptuous. "Humanity. Yes. We have detected your primitive broadcasts leaking into space. You are a young species, barely capable of faster-than-light travel. You know nothing of the galaxy or its laws." "Well, we're learning," Jake said with a slight smile. The Valorian commander did not appreciate the casual response. He leaned forward, his golden eyes narrowing. You will power down all systems immediately. You will submit to boarding and inspection. Your ship and all information about your species and your homeworld will become property of the Valorian Empire. You will accept our authority over all human territory. Refuse, and you will be destroyed. The bridge of the constellation fell silent. Jake's crew looked at him, waiting for his response. This was a serious threat. The Valorian ship could probably destroy them easily, if it wanted to. But Jake did not look worried. He scratched his chin thoughtfully, as if considering a mildly interesting problem. "Is that it?" Jake asked. "Are you done with the whole intimidation speech?" Vexar blinked, clearly not expecting that response. "I'm just asking if you're finished," Jake continued. "Because my crew has lunch scheduled in about 20 minutes, and I'd rather not be late. Chef is making something special today, and people get cranky if we miss meal times." The Valorian bridge fell completely silent. Vexar stared at the human captain as if he had grown a second head. In 3,000 years of Valorian dominance over this sector of space, no one had ever responded to their demands with casual indifference. Species trembled at the sight of their warships. Leaders begged for mercy. Entire civilizations surrendered without a fight. This human was asking about lunch. "You dare mock the Valorian Empire?" Vexar's voice rose, anger replacing arrogance. "You are one small ship, facing the might of the greatest military power in this region of space. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We have destroyed civilizations that dared to defy us." Jake nodded politely. "That's very impressive. Congratulations on all the conquering. But it doesn't change the fact that we haven't done anything wrong. We're in unclaimed space, according to our charts. If your empire has a claim here, maybe you should put up some signs. Or something. You know, like Valorian space. Please knock before entering." Kate Phillips, the chief engineer, tried to hide a smile. Ben Carter, the Valorian warship's weapons, came online with a flash of energy that lit up the darkness of space. 14 separate weapon systems locked onto the constellation, each one capable of tearing through a normal ship's hull like paper. On the Valorian bridge, Commander Vexar watched his targeting displays with satisfaction. This would be quick and decisive. The humans would learn respect, or they would die. Ben Carter watched his own displays with professional interest. The tactical officer had been in the military before joining the exploration service, and he knew weapon systems inside and out. What he was seeing made him slightly disappointed. "Captain, they've activated 14 weapon systems," Ben reported in a calm voice. "Plasma cannons. Looks like. Old design. Probably second or third generation. Power output is decent, but nothing special. Charging time is slow, about 15 seconds between shots. Targeting solution is pretty basic too." Jake nodded. "Recommendations? Well, sir, I could activate point defense and handle this myself, but that seems rude," Ben said. "Maybe wait and see if they're actually going to shoot. Or, if this is more posturing, let's give them one more chance," Jake agreed. "Lisa, open a channel." The view screen flickered back to life, showing Commander Vexar's angry face. The Valorian commander looked ready to explode with rage. No one had ever treated his threats so casually. His reputation, his honor, everything was being insulted by these primitive humans. "Last chance," Vexar growled. "Surrender or be destroyed." Jake sighed. "Look, Commander, nobody wants a fight here. You're upset because we entered space you claim is yours. Fine. We didn't know. Now we do. How about we just leave, and everyone can calm down?" "Unacceptable," Vexar snapped. "You will submit to Valorian authority or face the consequences." "That's not going to happen," Jake said simply. "We're not surrendering to anyone. If you want to fight about it, that's your choice. But I'm telling you it's a bad idea. Vexar cut the transmission again. This time, he gave the order to fire. A warning shot, he decided. Something to show these humans that he was serious. One plasma cannon fired, sending a bolt of superheated energy screaming across the distance between the two ships. The bolt was impressive to look at, a bright blue-white streak of destructive power. It would have vaporized an unshielded target instantly. The Valorian crew watched their displays, waiting to see the human ship desperately maneuver to avoid it. Instead, the Constellation did not move at all. Its automated defense systems detected the incoming shot, calculated its trajectory, and dismissed it as a minor threat. A small laser turret swiveled and fired a single pulse. The laser hit the plasma bolt dead center, disrupting its magnetic containment. The plasma dispersed harmlessly into space, its energy dissipating long before it reached the human ship. On the Constellation's bridge, Ben barely looked up from his console. Incoming, shot neutralized. Their plasma technology uses magnetic bottles for containment, pretty easy to disrupt with a focused energy beam. Should I file this under minor inconveniences? Seems appropriate, Jake said. He was reading a report on his personal display. Something about the mineral content of an asteroid field they had surveyed last week. The Valorian attack had not even made him look up. Kate Phillips's voice came over the intercom from engineering. Captain, I've been analyzing that plasma bolt. Their technology is pretty outdated. I'd say at least 2 centuries behind what we use. The containment field was unstable, the energy output was inefficient, and the targeting system was really basic. If they're planning to fight us with that, they're going to have a bad day. Thanks, Kate, Jake replied. Try not to hurt their feelings too much with the analysis. No promises, sir, Kate said with a laugh. On the Valorian ship, chaos erupted. Officers shouted reports, checking and rechecking their instruments. Their most powerful weapon, a plasma cannon that could destroy unshielded vessels with a single shot, had been swatted aside like an annoying insect. The human ship had not even bothered to move. It had simply erased the threat with a casual precision that spoke of vastly superior technology. Impossible, Vexar whispered. Scan them again. Full spectrum analysis. I want to know what we're facing. His science officer worked frantically, directing every sensor on the human ship. The results that came back made no sense. The ship was small, barely 300 meters long. It should not be able to mount shields strong enough to withstand their weapons. It should not have point defense systems capable of intercepting plasma fire. Everything about it suggested an exploration vessel, not a warship. Yet there it sat, completely undamaged, its crew apparently unconcerned. Commander, their shields are at full power, the science officer reported. Energy signature suggests a gravitational deflection system backed by ablative armor. Their point defense network has at least 40 individual turrets, all automated with quantum targeting computers. And sir, they have missile tubes, at least 30 of them. Vexar felt a cold sensation in his chest. Missile tubes meant serious military capability. Exploration ships did not carry missiles. What kind of missiles? Unknown, sir. But the power readings from those tubes suggest something with either nuclear or antimatter warheads. The Valorian commander sat back in his chair, his mind racing. He had made a terrible mistake. This was not a helpless exploration vessel crewed by primitive aliens. This was a fully capable warship pretending to be an explorer. The humans had been playing with him, letting him make threats, while knowing they could destroy his ship at any moment. He needed to regain control of the situation. He needed to show strength. He needed reinforcements. Send a message to the fleet, Vexar ordered. Priority alert. Hostile contact with unknown species. Request immediate assistance. His communications officer nodded and transmitted the message. Within minutes, responses came back. 4 Valorian warships were in the area, close enough to arrive within the hour. They would come to his aid and overwhelm the human ship with superior numbers. The Valorians had ruled this sector for 3,000 years, through military might. One small human ship would not change that. On the constellation, Lisa detected the Valorian transmission. She ran it through the translation software and frowned. "Captain, they're calling for backup. Looks like 4 more ships on the way. How long?" Jake asked. "Maybe 30 minutes. Maybe less." Jake considered this. 4 more Valorian warships would make the situation more complicated. Not necessarily more dangerous, but definitely more complicated. He tapped a control on his chair, opening a communication channel to Earth. "Lisa, send a priority message to command. Let them know we've encountered an alien species called the Valorians, and they're being difficult. Request support, but nothing too aggressive. Let's try to keep this diplomatic if possible." "What should I put in the message, sir?" Lisa asked. Jake thought for a moment. "Tell them we have a minor diplomatic incident. We might need backup. And tell them to bring coffee. It's going to be a long day." Lisa smiled and began composing the message. The Encrypt the Valorian reinforcements arrived exactly 28 minutes after Commander Vexor's call for help. 4 massive warships dropped out of hyperspace in a coordinated pattern, surrounding the constellation and the original Valorian vessel. Each ship was a monument to military power, covered in weapons and armored plating that had seen countless battles. Together, they represented enough firepower to reduce a small planet to rubble. Commander Vexor felt his confidence return as his fellow commanders reported in. Commander Thask, Commander Zoran, Commander Ilara, and Commander Dren. All experienced officers, all commanding powerful ships. The human vessel, no matter how advanced, could not possibly stand against 5 Valorian warships. The odds were simply too overwhelming. "Attention, human vessel." Vexor broadcast, his voice full of renewed authority. "You are now surrounded. You cannot escape. You cannot fight. Your only option is immediate surrender. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. This is your final warning." On the constellation's bridge, Jake looked at the tactical display, showing the 5 alien ships around them. Ben had helpfully added labels to each one, along with notes about their weapon loadouts and approximate capabilities. It looked like a video game interface, not a life-or-death military situation. "Well, they certainly like their dramatic formations," Jake observed. "Ben, are we in any actual danger?" Ben studied his console for a moment, running calculations. "Not really, sir. Their ships are big but slow. If we wanted to leave, we could just jump to quantum drive, and they couldn't stop us. Their weapons are still based on that outdated plasma technology. Our shields can handle it indefinitely, and if they all fired at once, point defense could probably handle most of it." "Probably? 97% confidence, sir. There's always a small margin for error." Jake nodded. "Fair enough. Lisa, has command responded yet?" "Just came through, sir," Lisa said, reading from her display. 3 ships are on the way. The Defiant, the Sentinel, and the Guardian. Admiral Murphy is commanding from the Defiant. ETA is about 15 minutes. Good. Send a response back. Tell them the situation is under control, but backup would be appreciated. And remind them about the coffee. Jake opened a channel to the Valorian ships. Commander Vexor's face appeared on screen, along with 4 smaller windows showing the other Valorian commanders. They all wore similar expressions of arrogance and barely contained aggression. "Commanders, I appreciate the reinforcements, but this really isn't necessary," Jake said pleasantly. "We were just having a conversation. Your Commander Vexor seems to think we should surrender to him, and I was explaining why that's not going to happen. No need for everyone to get involved." Commander Thask, a Valorian with bright red markings on his face, leaned forward. "Human, you do not understand your situation. You are 1 ship against 5. Your destruction is inevitable if you do not comply." "See, that's where you're wrong," Jake said. He stood up from his chair and walked closer to the view screen. "First, we're explorers. We came here peacefully. We don't want to fight anyone. Second, even if we did want to fight, you've got the numbers wrong. It's not 1 ship against 5. It's about to be 4 ships against 5, probably in the next 10 minutes or so. The Valorian commanders exchanged glances. The human was claiming reinforcements were coming. That seemed unlikely. Earth was far away, and they had only just sent their distress call. How could human ships arrive so quickly? You are bluffing, Vexar declared. Jake shrugged. Believe what you want, but I'm trying to prevent a situation where people get hurt unnecessarily. Your ships are powerful. I'll give you that. Very impressive. But your technology is outdated, your tactics are predictable, and honestly, you're all spending way too much energy on trying to look intimidating instead of actually communicating. Commander Ilara, a female Valorian with silver armor, spoke up. Humans are known to be deceitful. Our intelligence reports indicate your species has a long history of lying and manipulation. Intelligence reports? Jake raised an eyebrow. You've been watching us? We monitor all primitive species in our sector, Ilara said. Your radio and television broadcasts have reached our space for decades. We have observed your violent nature, your constant wars, your destruction of your own planet's environment. You are not to be trusted. Jake felt a flash of anger but controlled it. You've been watching Earth broadcasts? Let me guess. You've seen our wars, our conflicts, our worst moments, and you decided we're violent primitives. Did you also see how we ended most of those wars? How we built international cooperation? How we started fixing our environmental problems? Or did you just focus on the entertaining parts? The Valorian commanders said nothing. Their intelligence analysts had indeed focused on the dramatic aspects of human culture. Wars made for more interesting viewing than peace treaties. Disasters were more noteworthy than recovery efforts. Here's what you don't understand, Jake continued. Yes, humans have fought wars. We've made mistakes. We've done terrible things to each other and to our planet. But we learned from all of it. Every war taught us something. Every disaster made us stronger. Every problem we faced, we eventually solved. That's what humans do. We adapt. We overcome. We survive. Pretty words, Vexar said dismissively. But words will not save you from 5 warships. At that moment, Lisa's console chimed. She looked at her display and smiled. Captain, 3 ships just dropped out of quantum drive. It's Admiral Murphy. The Defiant, Sentinel, and Guardian appeared on the tactical display, taking up defensive positions around the constellation. Each human warship was smaller than the Valorian vessels but looked significantly more advanced. Their hulls were smooth and dark, covered in what appeared to be some kind of energy-absorbing coating. Weapon ports lined their sides, and launch bays stood ready to deploy fighter craft. Jake smiled at the view screens. See? Not bluffing. Now we have 4 ships, and you have 5. Still want to do this the hard way? A new window opened on the constellation's view screen. Admiral Chris Murphy appeared. A man in his 50s, with gray hair and sharp blue eyes. He wore a standard human military uniform without excessive decoration. His expression was calm, but carried an unmistakable authority. Captain Morrison, status report, Chris said. All good here, Admiral, Jake replied. We encountered the Valorian Empire. They're not happy about us being in what they claim is their space. Commander Vexar demanded we surrender. I declined. Then they called for backup, so I called for backup. Now, we're all here having a conversation about territorial boundaries and proper diplomatic protocols. Chris nodded and turned his attention to the Valorian commanders. Gentlemen, ladies, I'm Admiral Chris Murphy of the United Nations Space Fleet. I understand there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Captain Morrison is correct that we were unaware this region was claimed territory. We're happy to discuss boundaries and establish proper diplomatic channels. No need for threats or hostilities. Vexar's face twisted with frustration. There is nothing to discuss. This is Valorian space. Has been for 3,000 years. Your presence here is illegal. You will submit to our authority, or be destroyed. Chris sighed. Commander, I'm trying to be diplomatic here. But let me be very clear. Humanity does not submit to threats. We don't surrender because someone has bigger ships or makes scary demands. We believe in cooperation, mutual respect, and peaceful coexistence. If you share those values, we can work together. If you don't, well, that's going to be a problem. Commander Dren, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Admiral Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez sat at the tactical station aboard the Defiant, her fingers moving across her console with practiced efficiency. She was young for her position, only 26. But she had graduated top of her class at the Naval Academy. When Admiral Murphy asked for a target, she already had several options prepared. Sir, there's an uninhabited moon in this system, about 2 million kilometers from our current position, Amy reported. Sensor scans show no life, no resources of value, no strategic importance. It's basically a dead rock, Chris nodded. Perfect. Gentlemen, he addressed the Valorian commanders. Since you seem to doubt human capabilities, we're going to provide a demonstration. Please observe the moon at coordinates that Lieutenant Rodriguez is transmitting to your ships now. The Valorian commanders looked at each other with confusion. A demonstration? What were these humans planning? Commander Thask ordered his science officer to focus their sensors on the indicated moon. It was a small celestial body, roughly 800 kilometers in diameter, with a cratered surface and no atmosphere. Nothing special about it at all. What is the purpose of this? Vexar demanded. You'll see in a moment, Chris said calmly. Amy, proceed when ready. Amy activated the Defiant's main kinetic weapon system. The weapon was elegantly simple in concept, but devastatingly effective. It was essentially a railgun on a massive scale, capable of accelerating projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed. The projectile itself was just a solid rod of tungsten, about 3 meters long and half a meter in diameter. No explosives, no warhead. It did not need them. Physics would do all the work. The railgun fired with a flash of electromagnetic energy. The tungsten rod left the ship at tremendous velocity, crossing the 2 million kilometers to the target moon in less than 3 seconds. The Valorian sensors tracked its flight path, noting its speed with growing alarm. Whatever this projectile was, it was moving far faster than any missile or plasma bolt they had ever seen. The rod hit the moon's surface dead center. What happened next would be studied by Valorian scientists for years afterward. The kinetic energy of the impact was staggering, equivalent to several nuclear weapons detonating simultaneously. The moon's crust shattered on contact, sending massive shock waves through the entire body. Cracks spread across the surface like a spider web. Huge chunks of rock and debris exploded into space. Within 10 seconds, the moon began to break apart. The structural integrity of the entire celestial body had been compromised by a single impact. Pieces ranging from boulder-sized fragments to chunks several kilometers across drifted away from the dying moon. Where there had been a solid object, there was now a slowly expanding field of debris. The Valorian bridges fell completely silent. Every commander, every officer, every crew member stared at their displays in shock. They had witnessed the destruction of a moon with one shot, one single projectile. No sustained bombardment, no fleet action, no use of their most powerful weapons. The humans had simply pointed and fired, and a celestial body had ceased to exist. Commander Vexar felt his confidence crumble into dust. His plasma cannons could damage a moon. Certainly. Given several hours of continuous fire, they might even destroy one. But this was instantaneous. This was casual. This was power beyond anything the Valorian Empire currently possessed. Chris Murphy watched the destruction with a neutral expression. He took no pleasure in displays of force, but sometimes they were necessary. Better to demonstrate capability now than to have these aliens test humanity in actual combat. That weapon is called a kinetic impactor, Chris explained, his voice matter of fact. It's one of the older designs in our arsenal, actually. We've had the technology for about 150 years. It's simple, reliable, and extremely effective against both stationary and mobile targets. The projectile you just saw was traveling at approximately 12% of light speed. We can go faster if needed. Commander Ilara found her voice first. You destroyed a moon, an entire moon, with one shot. We did, Chris confirmed. I want you to understand something very important. Humanity developed in isolation, without knowledge of the galactic community. We had to learn everything the hard way. We faced wars, plagues, environmental disasters, asteroid impacts. Our own planet tried to kill us multiple times. We learned to build weapons that could protect us from any threat, natural or artificial. He paused, letting that sink in. We don't want to use these weapons against you or anyone else. We came to the stars hoping to find friends, allies, partners in exploration and discovery, but we will not be bullied. We will not surrender to threats, and we will not allow anyone to claim authority over us simply because they have bigger ships. Jake watched the Valorian commanders on his view screen. He could see them processing this new information, their assumptions about humanity being completely overturned. They had thought humans were primitive, weak, easy prey. Now they were realizing that humanity was potentially the most dangerous species they had ever encountered. Commander Dren spoke carefully, his earlier arrogance completely gone. Admiral Murphy, your demonstration has made your point clear. But you must understand our position. The Valorian Empire has maintained order in this sector for 3,000 years. We have rules, laws, protocols. Species do not simply arrive in our space and ignore our authority. I do understand that, Chris replied. And if Commander Vexar had approached Captain Morrison with respect and explained the situation diplomatically, we would have been happy to follow your protocols. But he didn't. He threatened. He demanded surrender. He called for warships. He escalated this situation unnecessarily. Vexar looked uncomfortable. He knew Chris was right. He had let his pride and arrogance drive his actions. He had assumed the humans would be frightened by Valorian military power, would beg for mercy, would submit like so many others had before. Instead, he had provoked a confrontation with a species far more advanced and far more dangerous than he had imagined. Ben Carter was monitoring the Valorian ships carefully. Captain, their weapon systems are still active, but power levels are dropping. I think they're standing down. Good, Jake said. Nobody wants this to turn into an actual battle. Chris continued his conversation with the Valorian commanders. I propose a simple solution. We will withdraw from this region and avoid Valorian space until proper diplomatic channels are established. You will provide us with clear maps of your territorial boundaries. We will arrange a meeting between our governments to discuss trade, treaties, and mutual cooperation. Does that sound reasonable? Commander Thask nodded slowly. It does. But Admiral, I must ask, if we had actually attacked your ships, what would have happened? Chris looked at him directly. I would have destroyed every ship that fired on us. I would have felt terrible about it, and I would have tried everything possible to avoid it, but I would have done it. My duty is to protect human lives and human interests. I take that duty very seriously. The honesty in his voice was unmistakable. This was not a boast or a threat. It was simply a statement of fact. Admiral Chris Murphy would do whatever was necessary to defend his people. Commander Zoran, who had been silent throughout most of the exchange, finally spoke. The Valorian Empire has grown complacent. We have ruled so long without challenge that we forgot what it means to face a true equal. You have taught us a valuable lesson today, Admiral Murphy. 1. we should have learned long ago. I'm glad you see it that way, Chris said. Humanity doesn't want to be your enemy. We'd much rather be your friend. But we need to be treated with respect, not threats. Vexar cleared his throat. Admiral, Captain Morrison, I owe you both an apology. I acted with arrogance and pride. I underestimated you badly. I thought I could intimidate you into submission as I have done with others. I was wrong. Jake appreciated the apology. It took courage to admit a mistake, especially in front of subordinates and allies. Apology accepted, Commander. Let's move forward from here. Emperor Theron looked every bit the ruler of a 3,000-year-old empire. His presence commanded respect without requiring threats or displays of force. Unlike Commander Vexar's aggressive arrogance, the Emperor carried himself with quiet dignity and genuine authority. Age had lined his face, but his eyes remained sharp and calculating. Admiral Murphy, Captain Morrison, I must first apologize for the behavior of Commander Vexar, Theron began. He exceeded his authority and acted with unnecessary aggression. The Valorian Empire does not make a habit of threatening peaceful explorers. Chris nodded respectfully. Thank you, Emperor Theron. We appreciate the apology. We understand that first contact situations can be tense and complicated. No permanent harm has been done. That is generous of you, Theron said. I have reviewed the engagement data from this encounter. My military advisors have analyzed your technology, your tactics, and your capabilities. I must be honest with you. The conclusions are deeply troubling for the Valorian Empire. The Emperor paused, choosing his words carefully. For 3,000 years, we have been the dominant power in this sector. We have faced challenges. Certainly, other species have tested our strength. But none have truly threatened our supremacy. We grew comfortable with our position. We assumed that our military might would always be sufficient. Jake listened intently. The Emperor was being remarkably candid, admitting weaknesses that most leaders would try to hide. Today, we encountered humanity, Theron continued, a species we had monitored from a distance, observing your radio broadcasts and assuming you were primitive and divided. We saw your wars, your conflicts, your problems, and we concluded that you were not a significant concern. We were catastrophically wrong. The Emperor gestured to something off-screen, and data began appearing on the human view screens. Technical specifications, analysis reports, comparison charts. The Valorian scientists had been busy. Your ships are smaller than ours but far more advanced, Theron explained. Your weapons are more efficient and more deadly. Your defensive systems are superior. Your crew training appears to be exceptional. But most concerning of all is your attitude. Commander Vexar tried to intimidate you with overwhelming force, and your response was to ask if he was done posturing. You were not afraid. You were not even particularly concerned. Ben Carter could not help but smile slightly at that description. It was accurate. That reaction tells me everything I need to know about humanity, Theron said. You are a species that has faced existential threats and survived. You have fought wars that nearly destroyed your civilization and rebuilt. You have struggled with disease, famine, natural disasters, and countless other challenges. All of this has made you strong in ways the Valorian Empire has never needed to be. Admiral Murphy leaned forward. Emperor Theron, I appreciate your analysis, but I want to be clear about something. Yes, humanity has faced hardships. Yes, we've developed advanced technology and strong military capabilities, but we don't want to be your enemy. We came to the stars hoping to find other intelligent life, to learn from them, to build relationships based on mutual respect and cooperation. I believe you, Theron said. Which is why I am contacting you directly, rather than sending more warships. The Valorian Empire has a choice to make. We can treat humanity as a threat, an enemy to be contained or destroyed, or we can acknowledge reality and seek partnership with a species that is, at minimum, our equal. Commander Vexar, still on the channel, looked distinctly uncomfortable. His emperor was essentially admitting that the humans were as powerful as the Valorians, possibly more so. 3,000 years of assumed superiority were being overturned in a single conversation. "I choose partnership," Theron declared. "Humanity has much to teach us. I think. You have developed in isolation, solving problems in unique ways. Your technology follows different principles than ours. Your military doctrine emphasizes efficiency over raw power. These are perspectives the Valorian Empire needs." Jake appreciated the Emperor's pragmatism. Instead of letting pride dictate policy, Theron was focusing on what was best for his people. That was the mark of a good leader. "We would welcome partnership with the Valorian Empire," Jake said. "We have much to learn from you as well. 3,000 years of galactic experience, knowledge of dozens of species, established trade routes, and diplomatic networks. Those are things humanity needs. As we expand into the galaxy, then let us make it official," Theron said. "I propose formal diplomatic relations between the Valorian Empire and humanity. We will exchange ambassadors, establish trade agreements, and create mutual defense pacts. We will share non-military technology and cultural knowledge. Does this sound acceptable?" 1. Chris looked at Jake, who nodded. "Emperor Theron, we don't have the authority to make binding agreements on behalf of all humanity," Chris said. "That requires approval from Earth's government. But I can speak for the United Nations Space Fleet, and I can say that we support this proposal enthusiastically. We will recommend it to our leadership immediately." "That is sufficient for now," Theron said. "I will send a formal diplomatic mission to Earth within the month. In the meantime, I am providing you with complete maps of Valorian territory. You are welcome to explore any unclaimed regions, and you may pass through Valorian space with proper notification. Consider it a gesture of good faith. We appreciate that," Jake said. "And as a gesture of good faith from humanity, we'll share some of our star charts. We've found several habitable planets in our explorations that might interest your people." Theron smiled, the first time the stern Emperor had shown anything approaching warmth. "An excellent beginning to our relationship. Now, I must address the matter of Commander Vexar." Vexar stiffened visibly, clearly dreading what was coming next. "Commander, you acted rashly and nearly started a war with a species we could not easily defeat," Theron said sternly. "However, you also recognized your mistake and apologized. You adapted to new information instead of stubbornly clinging to your initial assumptions. These things speak in your favor." Vexar bowed his head. "I await your judgment, my Emperor." "You are relieved of command of your warship," Theron said. Vexar's face fell. "Instead, you will be assigned to the Valorian Military Academy as an instructor. You will teach courses on first contact protocols, asymmetric warfare, and the dangers of underestimating opponents. You will use this incident as a primary teaching example. Your students will study everything you did wrong today, so they never make the same mistakes." There was silence for a moment. Then Vexar nodded slowly. "I understand, my Emperor. It is a fair assignment. I have much to teach about failure. I dust my. And about learning from failure," Theron corrected. "That is equally important." "Dismissed, Commander." Vexar's image disappeared from the communication channel, leaving only the Emperor and the human commanders. Theron looked tired suddenly, as if the weight of his years was catching up to him. "Admiral Murphy, Captain Morrison, I have one final request," Theron said. "When your diplomatic mission arrives on Valoria, our capital world, I would like you both to be part of it. You have earned respect today through your calm professionalism and your restraint. Your presence would make the negotiations much smoother." Chris looked at Jake. "Captain? I'd be honored," Jake said. "Though I should warn you, Emperor, I'm much better at exploring space than attending diplomatic functions. I might say something inappropriate at a formal dinner." Theron laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. Captain Morrison, after watching you calmly eat lunch, while being threatened by a warship, I think you will handle diplomatic dinners just fine. I look forward to meeting you both in person. The transmission ended, and the view screens returned to their normal displays. The Valorian warships were already powering down their weapons and moving into less aggressive formations. The crisis was over. Lisa let out a long breath she had not realized she was holding. Well, that went better than expected. Much better, Ben agreed. I was at least 60% sure we'd end up in a show. 3 months had passed since the confrontation in the Kepler sector. The incident had become legendary in both human and Valorian space, though the two civilizations remembered it somewhat differently. Humans told it as a story of diplomatic success and cool-headed crisis management. Valorians told it as a cautionary tale about the dangers of arrogance and the importance of respecting unknown species. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the landing pad of Valoria Prime, the capital world of the Valorian Empire, watching his shuttle being secured by ground crew. The planet was beautiful in a way that Earth was not. 3 moons hung in the sky, their surfaces visible even in daylight. The architecture around him was elegant and ancient, buildings that had stood for thousands of years, maintained with obvious care and pride. Admiral Chris Murphy walked up beside him, adjusting his dress uniform. Unlike their usual working clothes, both men wore formal attire for the diplomatic mission. Jake felt uncomfortable in the stiff collar and polished boots, but he understood the importance of appearances. "Ready for this?" Chris asked. "As ready as I'll ever be," Jake replied. "Negotiating with emperors is not exactly what I trained for. You'll be fine. Just be yourself." That worked pretty well last time. A Valorian honor guard approached, led by a female officer with deep purple skin and silver markings. She bowed respectfully, a gesture Jake and Chris returned. The Valorians had been remarkably accommodating, learning human customs and expectations to make their guests comfortable. "Welcome to Valoria Prime," the officer said in perfect English. The Valorians had spent the last 3 months studying human languages and had made impressive progress. "I am Captain Lyria. I will escort you to the Imperial Palace. Emperor Theron is expecting you." They followed Lyria through the capital city. Crowds gathered to watch the human visitors pass, their expressions curious rather than hostile. Children pointed excitedly, and Jake waved at them, earning delighted reactions. Whatever fears the Valorian people might have had about humans seemed to have faded after 3 months of peaceful contact. The Imperial Palace was magnificent, a structure of white stone and colored glass that caught the light from 3 different angles. Guards stood at attention as they entered, their weapons at rest but their eyes watchful. Inside, the palace was even more impressive, with high ceilings decorated with murals depicting Valorian history. Emperor Theron waited for them in a reception hall rather than a throne room, a subtle gesture that this was a meeting of equals rather than subjects petitioning a ruler. He wore simpler robes than in their previous communication, though still clearly expensive and well-made. He smiled as they entered. "Admiral Murphy, Captain Morrison, welcome to Valoria," Theron said, clasping hands with each of them in a human gesture he had clearly practiced. "I hope your journey was pleasant." "Very much so, Emperor," Chris said. "Your hospitality has been excellent. Please, call me Theron in private," the Emperor said. "We will have enough formality during the official ceremonies. For now, I wanted to speak with you personally before the negotiations begin." They settled into comfortable chairs around a low table. Servants brought drinks, a Valorian beverage that tasted faintly of mint and citrus. Jake sipped it cautiously and found it pleasant. "I wanted to thank you both," Theron said. 3 months ago, the Valorian Empire was heading toward a crisis. We had become complacent, arrogant, convinced of our superiority. Your arrival shook us out of that dangerous mindset. You forced us to confront reality. "Love, I'm not sure we did anything that special," Jake said. "We just refused to be bullied." That was exactly what we needed, Theron replied. Commander Vexar, for all his faults, was simply following patterns that had worked for centuries. Threaten, demand, overwhelm, species would surrender, and the empire would expand. It had become automatic, thoughtless. You broke that pattern. Chris leaned forward. How has the empire reacted? I imagine not everyone is happy about humans being treated as equals. You would be correct, Theron admitted. There is a faction within the military and nobility that wants to test your strength, to prove that the Kepler sector incident was a fluke. They believe we should be preparing for war with humanity, not friendship. And what do you believe? Jake asked. Theron was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. I believe that the Valorian Empire has two paths before it. We can cling to our pride and our past, insisting that we are supreme and treating all others as inferiors. This path leads to conflict with humanity and eventual decline. Or we can adapt, learn, grow stronger through partnership rather than conquest. This path requires humility, but offers genuine progress. You've chosen the second path, Chris observed. I have. And most of my people support this choice once they understand the reality of the situation. Your technology is impressive. Your military is formidable. But more than that, your culture values innovation and adaptation. These are qualities the Valorian Empire needs to cultivate. A servant entered quietly and whispered something to Theron. The Emperor nodded and stood. The diplomatic delegations have arrived. It is time for the formal negotiations to begin. But first, there is someone I want you to meet. They followed Theron to another room, smaller and more intimate. A woman waited there, human, dressed in professional attire. She stood as they entered, a warm smile on her face. Admiral Murphy, Captain Morrison, this is Ambassador Lauren Mitchell, Theron introduced. She arrived 2 weeks ago to establish the first human embassy on Valoria. She has been instrumental in preparing for today's negotiations. Lauren shook hands with both men. It's an honor to meet you both. The work you did in the Kepler sector made my job much easier. The Valorians were ready to listen because you had already earned their respect. How have things been here? Jake asked. Challenging but rewarding, Lauren said. The Valorian government is genuinely interested in cooperation. We've already made significant progress on trade agreements. Valorian interest in human entertainment, music, and art is particularly strong. They find our culture fascinating. They watch our television broadcasts, Jake said with a slight grimace. I hope they didn't judge us too harshly, based on reality shows. Lauren laughed. Actually, one of my first jobs was explaining to the Valorian Cultural Ministry that reality television is not an accurate representation of human behavior. It was an interesting conversation. The formal negotiations took place in a grand hall, with delegates from both civilizations seated across from each other. The discussions were complex and detailed, covering everything from territorial boundaries, to technology exchange, to military cooperation. Jake found himself bored by much of it, though he understood the importance. What interested him more were the informal conversations during breaks. He spoke with Valorian scientists about their research, with engineers about their ship designs, with explorers about the worlds they had discovered. The Valorians were genuinely curious about humanity, asking questions about Earth's history, human culture, and how humans had developed such advanced technology in relative isolation. Jake told them about human determination, about how every disaster had taught lessons. Every war had eventually led to peace. Every problem had demanded solutions. He explained that humans had not developed in a vacuum of safety and comfort. They had fought for survival, and that struggle had made them creative and resilient. One Valorian scientist, an elderly male named Corvin, was particularly interested in human innovation. Your species has only had spaceflight for about 200 years, Corvin said. Yet, Your technology matches or exceeds ours in many areas. How is this possible? Sequel go. Competition and desperation, Jake answered honestly. Humans have always been good at finding new ways to solve problems, especially when lives depend on it. We innovate quickly because we have to. It's how we survived. Fascinating, Corvin murmured. The Valorian Empire has had 3,000 years of relative stability. Perhaps too much stability. We have become conservative in our thinking, reluctant to embrace new ideas. There's value in stability too, Jake said. You've maintained peace across dozens of worlds for millennia. That's an incredible achievement. Maybe what both our species need is balance. Valorian stability, combined with human innovation. Corvin smiled. I believe you are correct, Captain Morrison. This partnership may benefit both our peoples more than anyone initially realized. The negotiations concluded successfully after 3 days of intense discussions. The treaty established formal diplomatic relations, created frameworks for trade and technology exchange, and outlined protocols for peaceful interaction between human and Valorian vessels. Most importantly, it included mutual defense provisions. If either civilization faced external threats, the other would provide assistance. At the signing ceremony, Emperor Theron and the human delegation head, Secretary General Maria Santos, affixed their signatures to the historic document. Cameras from both civilizations recorded the moment for posterity. It was, by any measure, one of the most significant events in both human and Valorian history. That evening, there was a celebration at the Imperial Palace. Music played, food and drink were served, and delegates from both species mingled freely. Jake found himself talking with a group of young Valorian officers who wanted to hear firsthand about the Kepler sector incident. Is it true you were eating lunch when Commander Vexar threatened you? One asked eagerly. Not quite, Jake said with a laugh. I told him we had lunch scheduled soon, and I didn't want to be late. There's a difference. Quote, still, that is remarkably calm under pressure. Another officer said, we are taught to respect power, to fear overwhelming force. You simply dismissed it. I didn't dismiss it, Jake corrected. I understood the threat, but I also understood our capabilities. Fear is useful when it keeps you alive. But pointless fear just makes you easier to control. Commander Vexar wanted us to be afraid so we would surrender. We chose not to give him that satisfaction. The officers nodded, absorbing this lesson. Jake could see them thinking about their own training, their own assumptions about power and authority. Later, Jake stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city. The 3 moons were rising, casting multiple shadows across the landscape. Admiral Murphy joined him, holding 2 glasses of Valorian wine. Thinking about the future? Chris asked, handing Jake a glass. Yeah, Jake admitted. 3 months ago, humanity thought we were alone in the universe. Now we have allies, trade partners, friends among the stars. It's a lot to process. It is, Chris agreed. But I think we're handling it well. You especially. The way you dealt with Vexar, calm and confident without being aggressive, that set the tone for everything that followed. I was just doing what felt right, Jake said. Humanity has survived this long by not backing down from bullies but also not starting unnecessary fights. That approach seems to work in space too. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the alien city go about its evening routines. Somewhere down there, human and Valorian diplomats were probably still working, hammering out the details of their new relationship. Somewhere in space, human and Valorian ships were beginning to patrol together, learning from each other. The constellation was scheduled to resume its exploration mission next month. Jake looked forward to getting back to work, discovering new systems, and maybe meeting more alien species. First contact with the Valorians had been tense, but ultimately successful. Maybe next time would be easier, or maybe not. The galaxy was a big place, full of unknowns and surprises. But Jake was confident that humanity would handle whatever came their way. They always had. As for Commander Vexar, He had indeed become an instructor at the Valorian Military Academy. His courses on first contact protocols and respecting unknown opponents were considered essential training for all officers. He showed his students the footage from the Kepler sector, pointing out every mistake he had made, every assumption that had proven false. His students learned valuable lessons, and Vexar himself found a sense of purpose in ensuring that others would not repeat his errors. The galaxy had learned something important that day in the Kepler sector. Humanity was not a species to be trifled with, not because they were aggressive or warlike, but because they refused to be intimidated. They had survived their own world's worst challenges and come to the stars with both humility and strength. The Valorian Empire tried intimidating human ships. Humanity just asked if they were done posturing, and then got back to work. It was, Jake reflected as he finished his wine, a very human response to an age-old problem. And it had worked perfectly. Oding War. Kate's voice came over the intercom. Captain, just to confirm, we're not fighting the 5 giant alien warships? No, Kate, we're not. Jake replied with a smile. Good. Because I just finished my lunch, and I'd hate to have to go to battle stations on a full stomach. The bridge crew laughed. The tension finally breaking. They had faced down an empire, demonstrated humanity's strength, and established the foundation for peaceful relations. Not bad for a day's work. Admiral Murphy stood from his chair. Captain Morrison, excellent work today. Your crew performed admirably under pressure. I'll be recommending commendations for all of you. Thank you, sir, Jake said. Though honestly, we were just doing our jobs. Exploring space, meeting new species, trying not to start wars. The trying not to start wars part is where most people struggle, Chris said dryly. You made it look easy. Now, I need to get back to the Defiant and start writing reports. Command is going to want a very detailed account of today's events. Lisa's console chimed again. She checked her display and looked surprised. Captain? Admiral. We're receiving a transmission from the Valorian homeworld. It's marked as highest priority. Someone very important wants to talk to us. Chris raised an eyebrow. Well, I suppose news of our encounter has already reached their leadership. Let's see what they have to say. A new window opened on all the view screens. An elderly Valorian appeared. His face marked with age and wisdom. He wore robes instead of armor, covered in intricate symbols that spoke of high rank and authority. His golden eyes were sharp and intelligent, studying the humans with great interest. I am Emperor Theron of the Valorian Empire, he said, his voice carrying a weight of command earned over many years. I have been monitoring this situation closely. Admiral Murphy, Captain Morrison, I wish to speak with you about the future of relations between our peoples. Al Murphy, you speak of peace while bringing warships. Your hypocrisy is evident. I brought warships because your commander Vexar threatened one of our exploration vessels. Chris replied calmly. If he had approached Captain Morrison with courtesy and explained the territorial situation, we could have resolved this hours ago. Instead, he decided to play the intimidation game. So, here we are. Ben's console beeped. He checked his display and spoke quietly to Jake. Sir, the Valorian ships are maintaining weapons lock, but they haven't moved to an attack formation. I think they're unsure what to do. So, Jake nodded. The Valorians had expected easy prey. A frightened exploration crew they could bully into submission. Instead, they were facing disciplined military vessels commanded by people who refused to be intimidated. The situation was not going according to their plan. Admiral, Jake said, I think the Valorians need a demonstration. They don't believe we're capable of defending ourselves. Maybe we should show them what human technology can actually do. Chris considered this. You're probably right, but let's keep it non-lethal. No need to start a war on day 1 of first contact. He turned to his tactical officer. Sostensibly. Every 2. Lieutenant Rodriguez. Find me a suitable target for a demonstration. ED transmission would take about 40 minutes to reach Earth, and another 5 minutes for command to organize a response. Human ships equipped with quantum drives could make the trip in about the same time it would take the Valorian reinforcements to arrive. Ben looked up from his console. Should I keep our weapons offline? For now, Jake said. No sense escalating if we don't have to. But stay ready. If they fire again, you can respond appropriately. Understood, sir. The bridge settled into a tense waiting period. The Constellation and the Valorian warship faced each other across the void, neither moving, both waiting for reinforcements. Jake went back to reading his report. Ben ran diagnostic checks on the weapon systems. Kate sang softly to herself in engineering as she monitored the reactor. Lisa coordinated with command, updating them on the situation. To an outside observer, the human crew seemed almost bored. They were facing a hostile alien warship, with more on the way, and they acted like it was just another day at work. Because, in many ways, it was. Kept his eyes on his console, but his shoulders shook slightly. Lisa had to cough to cover a laugh. The crew appreciated their captain's calm demeanor in the face of an obvious threat. Vexar's face darkened with rage. His hands gripped the arms of his command chair. You will surrender now, or I will open fire and destroy you. Jake's expression finally became serious. He looked directly at the Valorian commander. Commander Vexar, we came here in peace. We have no interest in fighting you or anyone else. But we also have no interest in surrendering to threats. If you want to talk like civilized beings, we're happy to do that. If you want to start a fight, well, that's your choice. But I should warn you that humans don't respond well to bullying. The view screen went dark as Vexar cut the transmission. On the Constellation's bridge, alert systems began to sound. Ben's console lit up with warnings. They're powering weapons, Ben reported. Looks like they're done talking. Jake returned to his command chair and sat down. Well, we tried diplomacy. Red alert. Bring shields up and ready defensive systems. Let's see what these Valorians have got.